He was one of Alabama's most prominent lawyers, a man admired for his wealth, power, and charm. To the outside world, Benjamin Carter's life seemed perfect, an extraordinary career, a stunning wife, and the respect of an entire community. But beneath the surface of his success lay a web of secrets, simmering tensions, and a single moment of blind rage that would unravel everything. How does a man so revered become the central figure in a case that shocks an entire nation? What happens when love, betrayal, and fury collide in a way no one could have foreseen? Before we dive into this chilling story of murder, family secrets, and devastating choices, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Inspector Stan. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Benjamin Carter was the epitome of Southern success. A powerful lawyer based in Birmingham, Alabama, Benjamin had built a reputation as one of the most formidable legal minds in the state. His courtroom presence was commanding, his arguments razor-sharp, and his ability to win cases nearly unmatched. But Benjamin's impact extended far beyond the courtroom. Known for his philanthropic ventures, he frequently donated to local charities, ensuring his name was not only respected but admired throughout the community. By his side was his wife, Caroline, a woman as dazzling as she was poised. A former beauty queen, Caroline embodied elegance and grace. She had given up a promising career of her own to support Benjamin's meteoric rise, dedicating herself to creating the perfect home and standing as the ideal partner to his professional ambitions. Together, they seemed unstoppable, a power couple who represented wealth, charm, and traditional Southern values. Their life together was a carefully curated masterpiece. Lavish dinner parties at their sprawling estate, high-profile charity galas, and vacations at their luxurious lake house were all part of their public image. Benjamin and Caroline were the envy of many, and their union was seen as a modern fairy tale, a seamless blend of ambition, beauty, and success. But even the most perfect facades can hide cracks. For all the admiration they garnered, few truly understood the strain within their relationship. While Benjamin basked in the glow of professional triumphs, Caroline found herself increasingly sidelined, her needs and desires overshadowed by her husband's relentless focus on his career. Behind the smiles and the glamorous lifestyle, a growing emotional distance began to take hold. To the outside world, however, the Carters remained untouchable. They were the picture of success, a life others could only dream of. No one could have imagined the storm brewing beneath the surface or the chain of events that would eventually tear this seemingly perfect couple apart. For all the success and prestige Benjamin Carter enjoyed, his relentless dedication to his career came at a cost. Long hours at the office, late-night strategy sessions, and an endless pursuit of perfection left little room for his personal life. At home, Caroline felt increasingly invisible. She had sacrificed her own ambitions to support Benjamin's, only to find herself sidelined and alone in a marriage that once seemed full of promise. As the days turned into years, the emotional distance between them grew. Conversations became brief and transactional, the intimacy that had once defined their relationship reduced to distant memories. Caroline's frustration simmered, but her resentment was matched by a profound loneliness. She yearned for the warmth and attention that Benjamin no longer seemed capable of giving. It was during this fragile time that she met Luke Hastings. A rugged and charismatic handyman, Luke had been hired to oversee renovations at the Carters' lake house, a project Benjamin had initiated but left Caroline to manage. Luke was everything Benjamin was not: approachable, attentive, and unpretentious. His easygoing demeanor and genuine interest in Caroline's thoughts and feelings were a welcome contrast to the cold detachment she experienced at home. What began as casual conversations about the renovation soon deepened into something more. Luke had a way of making Caroline feel seen and valued, a stark reminder of everything she had been missing. Their connection was undeniable, and despite the guilt tugging at the edges of her conscience, Caroline found herself drawn to him. It didn't take long for their bond to cross the line from emotional to physical. The affair began in secrecy, with stolen moments and whispered promises in places far from prying eyes. For Caroline, those fleeting encounters were a lifeline. In Luke's arms, she felt alive, cherished, and desired in a way she hadn't in years. But with every meeting came the growing weight of guilt. Caroline knew she was betraying her vows, but she couldn't deny the happiness she felt in Luke's presence. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was no longer just Benjamin Carter's wife, she was simply a woman, seen and loved for who she truly was. Yet even in those moments of passion and escape, a sense of foreboding lingered. They both knew that secrets have a way of surfacing, and the risk of discovery loomed like a shadow over their affair. Little did Caroline realize, the cracks in her marriage were about to deepen into a chasm, one that would consume not just her relationship but everything she held dear. For a man as meticulous and perceptive as Benjamin Carter, it wasn't long before he began to sense that something was amiss. Caroline's frequent absences, her newfound secrecy, and the occasional slips in her explanations didn't go unnoticed. Benjamin was a man used to reading people, a skill honed over years in the courtroom, and the subtle changes in his wife's behavior were impossible to ignore. At first, he dismissed the nagging doubts, chalking them up to stress or paranoia. But the signs persisted, her sudden need to run errands alone, her distracted demeanor during their already infrequent conversations. His unease grew into suspicion, and suspicion demanded answers. Unable to confront Caroline without proof, Benjamin turned to a private investigator. He justified it as a necessary step to protect his image, should there be any truth to his fears. Days turned into weeks, and the investigator's findings painted a picture that Benjamin had desperately hoped wasn't true. Photographs of Caroline meeting a man at a motel, receipts from their encounters, and even candid moments of laughter and intimacy between them left no room for doubt. The betrayal hit Benjamin like a thunderbolt. His wife, the woman who had stood beside him, who had shared his name, his home, and his life, had been unfaithful. But it wasn't just the affair that enraged him, it was the humiliation. The thought of others knowing, of whispers spreading through their social circles, was more than his pride could bear. Armed with the damning evidence, Benjamin confronted Caroline one evening, his fury barely contained. The accusations flew, his voice rising with every word as Caroline stood frozen, unable to deny the truth. When she finally broke down and confessed, her tears did nothing to quell his rage. Each detail she revealed felt like a dagger, twisting in his chest. "You destroyed everything," he shouted, his face contorted with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To us?" Caroline, through her sobs, tried to explain, to plead for understanding, but Benjamin couldn't hear her. All he could think about was the man who had taken what was his, who had dared to step into his life and shatter it. Consumed by humiliation and blinded by fury, Benjamin made a decision that would change his life forever. He demanded the name of her lover, pressing her until she reluctantly admitted it, Luke Hastings. A name that Benjamin would never forget. Fueled by rage and a need for vengeance, Benjamin began tracking Luke, piecing together the details from the investigator's report. It wasn't hard to find him. Luke was a simple man with a simple routine, a stark contrast to Benjamin's polished, calculated existence. On the night Benjamin finally confronted him, it was at the motel where Caroline and Luke often met. The location itself added fuel to his fire, the thought of their indiscretions playing out in such a place filling him with disgust. As he approached the room, adrenaline coursed through his veins, his mind consumed by a singular thought, making Luke pay for what he had done. What Benjamin didn't know was that this confrontation wouldn't just end a life, it would unearth a secret even more devastating than the one that had brought him there. Benjamin Carter stormed into the dimly lit motel room, his heart pounding with rage. Luke Hastings stood frozen, caught off guard by the sudden intrusion. The tension was suffocating, the air thick with unspoken accusations and raw emotion. "You!" Benjamin spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You've destroyed everything I've worked for. My marriage, my reputation, my life." Luke took a cautious step back, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said, his voice steady but tinged with regret. I didn't know who she was at first, and by the time I found out, it was too late. I loved her." Those words only fueled Benjamin's fury. His vision blurred with anger as the image of Caroline and Luke together flashed in his mind. "Loved her," he snarled. "You think that excuses what you've done? You think that erases the humiliation you've caused me?" Luke tried to explain, to reason with the man standing before him, but Benjamin was deaf to his words. The betrayal, the shame, it was too much. In a blinding moment of rage, Benjamin reached into his coat, pulling out the gun he had brought with him. "Benjamin, please," Luke pleaded, his voice rising with desperation. But the sound of the gunshot cut through the room, silencing him forever. Luke's body collapsed onto the floor, the life draining from his eyes as Benjamin stood over him, his chest heaving, his mind racing. For a moment, there was silence. The weight of what he had done began to settle in. Benjamin's hands trembled as he stared at Luke's lifeless form. Panic set in. This wasn't supposed to happen, not like this. He needed to cover his tracks. In his haste, Benjamin began searching through Luke's belongings, looking for anything that might link him to the scene. It was then that he found it, a worn, faded photograph tucked into Luke's wallet. Benjamin's breath caught in his throat as he unfolded the picture. It was of two young boys, arms slung around each other, smiling brightly at the camera. He recognized one of them immediately. It was himself, no older than 10. The other boy, standing beside him, was unmistakably Luke. A flood of memories came rushing back. Decades ago, Benjamin's parents had divorced in a bitter battle that tore their family apart. His mother had taken him, while his father had disappeared with his younger brother. They had been separated ever since, their lives taking vastly different paths. Now, standing over Luke's body, Benjamin was overcome with a wave of horror and disbelief. The man he had just killed wasn't just his wife's lover, he was his long-lost brother. Benjamin sank to his knees, the photograph clutched tightly in his hands. Guilt consumed him, suffocating and inescapable. The rage that had driven him to this point was gone, replaced by an unbearable sense of loss and regret. In that moment, Benjamin understood the full weight of his actions. He had not only destroyed his marriage and his reputation, he had destroyed the one chance he had to reconnect with the brother he had lost so long ago. The aftermath of Luke Hastings' murder unfolded quickly, and Benjamin Carter's carefully constructed life began to crumble before his eyes. Within hours, evidence from the crime scene, bloodstains, Luke's belongings, and surveillance footage from the motel, was pieced together by investigators, and the trail led directly to Benjamin. The police were swift in their pursuit, uncovering the truth of his involvement with alarming efficiency. The shocking discovery of Luke's identity as Benjamin's long-lost brother added a layer of tragedy to the case. Investigators, digging into Luke's past, uncovered details of his separation from Benjamin during their parents' bitter divorce. They also learned that Luke had spent years in foster care, never knowing that the brother he had been searching for all these years had been living in the same city, within reach. The revelation sent shockwaves through the media. News outlets pounced on the case, eager to paint every angle in dramatic detail. The headlines screamed about the wealthy Alabama lawyer who had not only murdered his wife's lover but had killed his own brother, a secret he had unknowingly carried for decades. The story became a national sensation, with cameras and reporters flooding Birmingham, eager to learn more about the case that seemed too bizarre to be true. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some viewed Benjamin as a man driven to madness by betrayal and years of emotional neglect. They saw him as a victim of circumstance, betrayed by his wife and humiliated in front of the world. His actions, though extreme, were seen by some as the desperate acts of a man who had lost everything. But many others were appalled. They condemned Benjamin's actions as unforgivable, pointing to the calculated nature of the murder and his attempt to cover his tracks. The discovery that Luke was his brother only added a tragic twist to the already horrific tale. The public couldn't decide if Benjamin was a man undone by his emotions or a cold murderer who had acted without remorse. For Caroline, the aftermath was a personal hell. She was not only grieving the loss of Luke, the man she had loved, but was also consumed by guilt over her role in the events that led to his death. She realized that if it hadn't been for her affair, Luke would still be alive, and Benjamin's life wouldn't have been shattered. The media, which had once hailed her as the perfect wife, now vilified her. The scandal was impossible to escape. Caroline's every move was scrutinized, and she became a target of public judgment. She was no longer the elegant, graceful woman who stood by her husband's side, she was the adulterous wife, the catalyst for an unimaginable tragedy. Unable to bear the weight of the constant scrutiny, Caroline fled Birmingham. She disappeared from the public eye, retreating to a secluded location where she hoped to escape the relentless media circus and the shame that now clung to her name. But no matter where she went, the memories of what had happened, the love, the lies, and the death, would follow her, a dark shadow that could never be outrun. The trial of Benjamin Carter was nothing short of a media spectacle. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and legal experts, all eager to witness the unraveling of one of the most shocking cases to ever hit Birmingham. The prosecution wasted no time in framing the case against Benjamin, arguing that his actions were the result of uncontrollable rage and a sense of entitlement. They painted Benjamin as a man driven by ego, a powerful lawyer who believed he could control everything around him, including his wife, his reputation, and the lives of those who crossed him. The affair, they argued, had exposed his fragile sense of self-worth, and in a moment of blind fury, he had taken his brother's life without remorse. The prosecution emphasized the cold-blooded nature of the murder in his attempt to stage the scene, positioning Benjamin as a man who, despite his wealth and power, was willing to commit unspeakable acts to protect his image. The defense, however, presented a more nuanced argument. They contended that Benjamin had been pushed to the brink by years of emotional neglect, compounded by the devastating revelation that his wife's lover was not just a stranger, but his long-lost brother. The defense portrayed Benjamin as a man overwhelmed by betrayal on multiple levels, unable to process the shock of discovering that he had unknowingly lived alongside the brother he had lost so many years ago. They claimed that in his emotional turmoil, Benjamin had acted impulsively, driven by an overwhelming sense of rage and confusion. The courtroom was tense as both sides made their final arguments, with the jury tasked with determining whether Benjamin's actions were those of a cold-blooded murderer or a man who had been consumed by pain and emotional chaos. In the end, the jury delivered a verdict that shocked no one but left the courtroom filled with a deep sense of tragedy. Benjamin Carter was convicted of second-degree murder. His defense that he had been emotionally devastated by the betrayal of both his wife and his long-lost brother did little to sway the jury. While they found his actions less calculated than first-degree murder, they still believed he was responsible for the senseless loss of life. The judge sentenced Benjamin to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the gavel fell, the courtroom was silent, the gravity of the situation settling in. Benjamin's wealth, his career, and his reputation had been obliterated in a single moment of rage. The once powerful lawyer who had stood at the pinnacle of success was now a convicted murderer, sentenced to spend the rest of his days behind bars. For those who had followed the case, the outcome was bittersweet. While justice had been served, there was no real victory. The tragedy was profound. Benjamin had not only destroyed his own life but had decimated the lives of those he loved, including his long-lost brother, who never had the chance to truly know him. The trial had revealed the depths of human emotion, how easily love could turn to betrayal, how pride could shatter relationships, and how a single moment of rage could change everything. For Benjamin Carter, the courtroom was a final reminder of the price he had paid for his own destructive choices. Benjamin Carter's life in prison was a far cry from the luxurious existence he had once known. The wealthy lawyer, once adored by society, now found himself behind bars, surrounded by men whose lives had been shaped by violence and desperation. The walls of his cell felt suffocating, a constant reminder of the choices that had led him to this bleak reality. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world outside seemed distant and cold, Benjamin reflected on the life he had lost, the life he had destroyed. He thought often of Luke, the brother he never knew he had until it was too late. He wondered what might have been if he had known the truth earlier, if he had ever taken the time to seek him out before fate had brought them together in such a tragic way. Regret gnawed at him, a constant companion. Benjamin had always prided himself on his intellect, his ability to control the world around him. But in that one moment of blind rage, all of his pride, all of his power, had crumbled to dust. His anger had cost him everything, his family, his freedom, and the future he had once believed was secure. And worst of all, it had cost him his brother, the one person who could have understood him in ways no one else could. Prison life was a harsh teacher. The isolation, the monotony, and the constant reminder of his crime left Benjamin broken in ways that no courtroom sentence could. He had lost everything, but more painfully, he had lost himself. His identity, once so tightly wrapped in success and authority, was now a shadow of the man he had been. Meanwhile, Caroline was rebuilding her life in a small town far from Birmingham. The media had long since lost interest in her, and the weight of her guilt over Luke's death had driven her into a quieter existence. No longer the glamorous socialite, Caroline took up a humble life, working at a local charity and volunteering her time at a shelter for abused women. It was her way of seeking redemption, trying to make amends for the pain she had caused, for the role her affair had played in the tragedy. She had left behind the world of fame, wealth, and constant judgment, finding solace in the simplicity of helping others. Yet, even in this new life, the shadow of the past lingered. Caroline would never be free from the grief and guilt that accompanied her actions. The affair had shattered her marriage, her reputation, and ultimately, Luke's life. No matter how much good she did in the world, it could never erase the loss she had caused. Occasionally, Caroline would visit Benjamin in prison, though their interactions were strained and painful. The visits were brief, filled with long silences and guarded words. Neither of them knew what to say. The tragedy that had brought them together, Luke's death, the murder, the lies, had left a scar that neither of them could heal. They had both been irrevocably changed by the events that had unfolded, and the shared grief between them was palpable. Benjamin, sitting behind bars, would listen to Caroline's soft, sorrowful voice, and in those moments, they both understood the weight of what they had lost. Their once perfect life had been shattered, and though they both longed for answers, there was no way to undo the damage. For Benjamin and Caroline, the fallout from the murder, the affair, and the lies was more than just the end of their marriage or his imprisonment. It was the end of their own illusions about love, family, and the future. They were left to navigate a world where trust had been broken beyond repair, where anger had stolen their most precious connections, and where redemption felt like an impossible dream. The consequences of their actions would haunt them for the rest of their lives. This case serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the fragile nature of human relationships. Pride, secrecy, and unbridled rage combined to destroy everything Benjamin and Caroline had worked for, their marriage, their family, and their futures. What began as a picture-perfect life, filled with wealth and admiration, crumbled under the weight of betrayal and unspoken truths. The tragic death of Luke Hastings, a man Benjamin didn't even know was his brother, ultimately became the painful consequence of years of emotional distance, lies, and unaddressed pain. Benjamin and Caroline's story is a tragic testament to the devastating cost of betrayal and the irreparable damage caused by secrets kept in the shadows. Their lives were forever altered by the choices they made, and their attempts to cope with the consequences are marked by regret and sorrow. In the end, their story is one of love lost and the overwhelming grief that follows when everything falls apart. Could this tragedy have been avoided? Would things have turned out differently if Benjamin and Caroline had communicated more openly, if they had been able to confront the difficulties in their marriage before it was too late? Their inability to express their true feelings, Benjamin's growing emotional detachment and Caroline's loneliness, set the stage for the devastating events that followed. And the deep-seated secrets, both personal and shared, only added fuel to the fire. The story also highlights how societal expectations can further complicate matters. Benjamin, as a successful lawyer and pillar of the community, felt immense pressure to maintain an image of perfection. Caroline, too, felt the weight of public scrutiny, afraid to reveal the cracks in her marriage or her feelings of neglect. In the end, these unspoken expectations became another barrier between them, one that led to devastating consequences. This case serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of keeping secrets and the importance of honest communication. It also underscores how societal pressures can shape our actions, sometimes in ways we don't fully understand until it's too late. If this story shocked you, like and subscribe to Inspector Stan for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, betrayal, and human nature.